Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on visibility, the first step towards microsegmentation based on zero trust, zero complexity, and zero compromise. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Smartha Guha. I am the sales director for India and SARC at ColorTokens. I'll be the host and one of the panelists for this session. Joining me today on the panel is Col Inderjeet Singh, Chief Cybersecurity Officer at Vara Technologies. A warm welcome to you, Colonel Inderjeet ji. He is one of the top 50 fabulous Innovative Congress Leaders Award winner. Also joining us is Deepak Kaul, more than 25 years experience in the cybersecurity domain and currently as part of ColorTokens as a senior manager for pre-sales globally at ColorTokens. Welcome, Deepak. In today's session, we will discuss existing security controls and evolving threats. We'll talk about what is Zero Trust and how does it improve the security posture of organizations and enterprises. We'll give visibility into misconfigurations and threat trials. And finally, we'll summarize in terms of how host-based technologies can help gain granular visibility and control for your enterprise. Last but not the least, we'll wrap up the session with question and answers. You can keep sending your questions on the chat window. Before we get started with the presentation, I would like you, the audience, to please note that you can direct all your questions to me through the questions windows panel available on the right hand side corner of your screen at any time during this presentation. Answers to the question will be provided during the Q&A round at the end of the presentation. Thank you, Colonel and Deepak. We are now opening the presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Smartha. Thank you, Smartha, and really wonderful to be part of this the microsegmentation presentation. To begin with, I'll just like to bring out that way the networks are evolving today and way the technologies are coming in, whether we talk of the AI, the virtual reality, the AR, everything which is taking place. And also we are seeing there's a lot of dynamics which is happening in terms of the cloud adaptation or the IoT or the mobility which is coming up in all the enterprises in the network. It's changing the complete game of the networks, and it is also changing the requirement and the adaptation, which is very well taken by the industry today. But at the same time, it's really posing a problem for the security architects who are planning to do the security part of it. Can I go to the next slide, please? So having said so, enterprises have really invested extensively in the perimeter security. If you look at it in the past couple of years, being part of the security team, there's a lot of firewalls, the next gen UTMs and the firewalls, IPS, IDS, and the list goes on. They've been adding the device after device which is coming up. And all this is to protect less than 17% of the traffic. That's a north-south traffic which is happening, right? And most security solutions, that provide visibility into the north-south traffic, while they're having a very inadequate east-west traffic visibility. And this east-west traffic visibility is most important. We'll be talking and developing on it in the due course of time, and it covers the server-to-server traffic that accounts for almost over 80% of all enterprise traffic. That's the dynamics which is changing from what it was earlier. And if you look on the right side of the slide, how the attacks are changing, we find more of APTs which are there. The attacks are more focused. We have botnets which are there, and the ransomware attacks, the zero-day attacks. So there's a huge gambit of attacks which are happening today, and all the security architects or the security solutions do fail some point in time, right? And while we used to talk of the signature-based technologies, now we talk of the technologies which are anomaly-based technologies, and we have to take care of those kind of threats and vulnerabilities in place. Thereafter, the human factor can never be taken out of equation. And if you look at it, most of the attacks which happen are the insider attacks. Okay, and we have so many point solutions which are working in silos. All the security, solution architects, they know that they have the device after device, planning to safeguard them against any threat. Okay, and we have the emerging technologies which are just brought in. They're already changing. It poses that the threat landscape is increasing. The threat vectors are increasing. Whether we talk about the cloud, the mobility, and the other network technologies which are there. Okay, and what we are lacking in is the lack of the real situation awareness. That's what we want. Okay, and we generally have a false sense of security. So, if you look at it, the visibility wasn't a priority until now, because all communication inside of an enterprise was considered to be trusted. However, repeated attacks over the years have proven that perimeter can be penetrated to carry out sophisticated attacks, which remain undetected for weeks and even months. So that's the kind of situation we are all in today. Can we go to the next slide, please? Right. So, how the networks have evolved, I'll just give you a viewpoint on that. And when we talk of the earlier networks which were there, they were all kind of the applications and the users were inside the network. And everything which was there in the network was being considered trusted, right? And the perimeter was the ultimate security, what you used to think of. And the threats which were there were like, we used to always think it's outside. And they're all monolithic applications with known behavior, we always thought of, right? And every infrastructure was on-prem, and we had a manageable amount of data which was there, which we could manage it, and hardly any business applications were getting exposed outside. Can we go to the next slide, please? Whereas what's happening is, it's a kind of a perimeter situation which is happening. There are challenges in the perimeter network which has come up now as the security landscape, began to evolve with cloud adoption and migration to the hybrid data centers. Organizations have begun to revisit their security strategy. There's a rethought of how we have to do the security part of it. And this usually meant adding more hardware and software security products to the existing infrastructure. And layer after layer, we were having security solutions, maybe from the layer 1 to layer 7, we have been having plethora of security devices which are being put into place, and which has created traffic bottleneck. That's the major issue. And management overheads with inconsistencies in policy implementation across a network. Okay, and that is how the complete perimeter security started posing up a problem. We were not able to accommodate the kind of work styles which we are having, especially when we're looking in, like we are all, most of the people who are being told to work from home, the biggest challenge is the business continuity. Bring your own device or bring your own cloud. How are you going to, secure your networks? You have the data which is there in your data centers, and you're bringing in the mobile devices. How do you bring that security, encompassed into your network? How do you know that the mobile device which is there accessing your network is not sniffing into the data which is not required to be sniffed? Okay, and attackers can compromise a single endpoint within the trusted boundary and quickly expand their foothold across the entire network. And so today's threats which are there is that if a malware penetrates into a network, it's a human being that gets into your network and opens up a command and control center and controls the complete thing how the way he wants to get into your network. Okay, and he's sniffing through the complete data. Okay, and can attack when he wants. So that's the kind of threat landscape which we are having, and that's what was being called as the castle and the moat approach. Can you go to the next slide, please? So when we talk of today's business, the networks, what we are seeing is evolving. We're seeing the cloud coming in a big way, and it's a complete digital enterprise is driving the new IT paradigm. Okay, we have the DevOps which is there, we have the IoTs which is there, we have the mobility which is coming in, and there are complex security requirements which are evolving today. it's all causing an inconsistent visibility and security and control to any security architect, and a confusing end user experience. So this how the complex the networks are becoming each day and day. Next, please. So, and when we come on to the coming years, where we are seeing the new challenges which are coming up with the cloud coming in, mobility coming in, your complete digital transformations happening, the 5G coming in, the IoT networks which are coming in. So it's a very complex network what we are going to see. We are seeing the remote workers working onto the network. So you can't have a classic perimeter security architecture which used to safeguard the complete network, as a security architect. Not that will be a very difficult challenge to handle. And what practically is happening is that earlier when we used to talk of a monolithic application, and they had a very known behavior, we are going on to the microservices, we are going to the risky applications which are coming up. Then the amount of data which was manageable, now we are having so much of big data explosion, the unstructured data. How do we handle that? Okay. Earlier slides I told you about was on-premise infrastructure, very set pattern. We knew the architecture, and today we have the cloud and the hybrid infrastructure, very difficult to manage. And earlier what we used to have was a traditional threat environment, and today we have a advanced threat environment. And I touched upon the point of the east-west traffic, which is more challenging for all of us. Next, please. So, what's happening is that practically the threats are moving inside today. What the threats were outside, it's all inside. And approximately 80% of the data center traffic is east-west. Yet the 75% of organizations yet rely solely on the traditional perimeter security. We are not changing that classic architecture. And 58% of the organizations have zero visibility into the east-west traffic. And 80% lack visibility into the unstructured data, right? So threats are inside, but we are not graduating towards those kind of situation, and the security models aren't strong enough to protect you from new sophisticated threats like ransomware. Okay, so that's how the threats are today, which we perceive. Next, please. So, in the earlier part of my presentation, where I told that the human beings cannot be obliviated from the complete cycle, and some of the figures which are being brought out are that 4% of the end users will click on everything which is there in the network. Okay, and 28% of the attacks involved the insider attack actors, and 17% of the breach had errors as casual events. So the insider threat is a bigger challenge as well. Next, please. When we talk of the malware today, this is one place where the window of opportunity for the identifying the malware, and we've been talking of it in all the forums where we talk of the malware attacks, we talk of the ransomware attack, the zero-day attack, or the APTs. And to tell you that the window of opportunity to identify any malware is just first 10 minutes after the attack, where it's just hit your network, attacked you, and it has compromised your network. After that first 10 minutes has gone by, it takes a number of days and months and years together to identify that malware really hit you. Okay, and this 10 minutes is the most important part for identifying the attack which has happened to you. And this is where, as a security architect, you have to play a major role in identifying that malware. Next, please. So how do we, approach these kind of threats which are there? How do we, work on these kind of things? So zero trust architecture was coined by Forrester in 2010. And the concept of zero trust network is very simple. As the name implies, trust no one. And in zero trust, all network traffic is untrusted. That's how a zero trust is all about. And while we spoke of the traditional castle and the moat model, which actually focus on securing the perimeters of your network from the external threats, zero trust security goes to a level deeper to secure the assets inside your network itself. That's a major advantage what we're getting with the zero trust. If your network, if your perimeter is breached or an insider threat pops up inside your data center, your application, your workloads, and your data remains still protected with the zero trust. Okay, and practically it means that one agent, one platform approach not only can help the security team visualize all the critical assets and communication, but also the micro-segment the networks to enforce security policies that remain consistent. Okay, so that's what a zero trust in the nutshell is all about. And every device, every user, net flow is authenticated and authorized. And here we are talking about the policies which are dynamic and calculated from as many sources as data as possible. So while we have all designed our networks when we took the devices, the IPS, IDS, firewalls, we thought of the risks are static, the threats are static, but that's not the case today. Okay, so that's what is the dynamic, and that's how the zero trust really works and looks into. Next, please.
Well, it's time for a poll. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
So there's a poll question which is coming up, and you can click on one of the poll options to select what you understand and believe. So what is the main reason that an attack goes undetected in the environment for a long period of time? Is it plenty of tools but don't know where to find the information, or lack of visibility, or human errors, or all of these? Five more seconds and then we'll look into the poll results. So few people say it's lack of visibility, but most of them say all of these. Mostly it's all of these which cause the attack to go undetected for a long period of time. Moving on to the deck.
Yeah. So, well, just as a definition from a understanding point of view, what's the zero trust all about? Zero trust model assumes the untrusted actors already existing that exist in the inside and the outside of the network to be identified. And it requires a powerful identity service to secure every user apps access to the apps and the infrastructure. And once you identify an identify the app or the device, you authorize an access to the resource that has been granted, but with just enough privilege necessary to perform the task at hand. So you're not giving away all the controls to any application, any device, any person. Okay, so instead of old age trust but verify, the new paradigm is never trust, always verify. That's what we have been telling again and again. That's what is the zero trust about. Next, please. So like I had brought out that the zero trust came into being in 2010 earlier. Then in 2017, the Gartner came up and they came up with a new concept which was released as the Gartner's Continuous Adaptive Risk and Trust Assessment, called CARTA in short. And it came in 2017, which practically brought in that the security posture must be constantly changing. Okay, and the digital risk and the trust vary over a period of time. So the risk which we thought was static is always constantly changing. And the it extends the approach outside the enterprise itself. So your perimeters, which are classic in nature, are no more a classic perimeter. So the threats outside also are, encompassed into it. And in addition, what happened was that Forrester, which came up to the original model of the Zero Trust, they came up with the Zero Trust Extended that happened in 2018. That was called the ZTX. And in 2019, NIST came up with the first draft for their own Zero Trust architecture called ZTA. So they have taken the proposals for the ZTA. So the next level of security, what we're talking is a Zero Trust, is getting propagated and promulgated amongst all the security organizations, and they're thinking about it as to how to secure the networks. Next, please. So while we spoke of what's a Zero Trust, we just touch upon how a Zero Trust will improve your security, right? How it ensures the right question gets answered based on the risk profile of the user, device, and the resource to which they are requesting access to. Like during the authentication time, it checks on, is this user legitimate? Is the device healthy enough for the task what it's going to perform? Is the user who they say they are they the right kind of users? During authentication, it's like, should this user have the access under any circumstance? And just think of it. Are these the questions which we asked when we were implementing IPS, IDS, firewalls? I think the answer, you will get it to yourself. Doing transactions, is this session still driven by the real user? Okay. Does the amount of trust in the user identity match the level of risk associated with this transaction? Has the request being verified? Okay. And during the data access, did the user provide consent for the access, and to whom? What transactions, whether it was a read, modify, delete, happened with their consent? Should this data be encrypted? So these are, the questions when we are trying to implement the Zero Trust. And when we answer these questions, we are trying to improve the security posture itself. Next, please. And some of the advantages of the Zero Trust is, we are moving from the network-based to identity and application-based security. And we are also dynamically balancing the user experience with risk and allowing companies to, embrace a perimeter-free infrastructure. And this what gives is, it leaves no gaps by covering the broadest range of network attack surfaces. Okay, which range from users to endpoints, networks, and resources. It enables organizations to increase business agility through secure adoption of cloud and mobile solutions. It also provides a framework to properly manage the risk of exposing sensitive application and infrastructure to business partners. Next, please. And it ensures IT visibility into risk in their access controls and automatically identify the needle in the haystack. It creates a satisfied, productive user by ensuring the proper control are in place to address appropriate level of risk without requiring a heavy-handed maximum control approach. And it requires a less management skill set, and it costs less than a patchwork defense focused on silos and the resources. So it actually gives a lot of advantages when we are implementing in your organizations, in your network. So Zero Trust practically, changes the complete thought process of the present day security, what we are being following, to the next gen security requirement. Okay. Having said so, I'll now hand you over to Smartha for taking on the discussions further. Smartha, please.
Sure. Time for a poll. Questions? So before I begin my part, just a question for everybody. Do you think you have the right level of visibility within your networks, endpoints, and enterprise? It may be a yes or a no. We will be shortly showing the results of the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the results are 67% of the people say that they do not have the right level of visibility, and I agree to it. And a few people do say that they have a visibility. Kudos to that. And moving on to the presentation with this, the key challenge which we have with regards to visibility is that if we don't have the visibility early on, we will not be able to protect our environment. Like Colonel was mentioning earlier, if you look at the cost of data breach study by Ponemon in 2019 also, it took more than 206 days to detect a data breach. And today, the largest contamination that the world is fighting is coronavirus. Everybody is aware about it. Had this been discovered even a week earlier in China when it started, the world would have been a better place and we would not have been in this social lockdown. This is a classic example of now people believing in zero trust, not trusting anybody, even though they may be some level of no fever, no symptoms, etc. But if somebody has traveled back from some foreign country, we will be definitely putting them in a self-quarantine mode. We'll be creating a micro perimeter across that individual, reducing the social contact so that the spread can be reduced and the calamities can be taken care of. And that is the mantra with which organizations like us work. So the title of the slide, as it says, is visible. So what you see is only what you can protect. If you can cite an anomaly early in the ecosystem, you can protect it significantly well, and your enterprise does not suffer a catastrophe. To add to the current security woes, it is estimated that the network traffic is bound to increase with the rise in east-west traffic, and it will be about 85% of the total data center traffic by 2021, is what estimates by the Big Four says. Moving on to the next slide. The challenge is in case of a lack of visibility or incomplete visibility, like 67% of the people responded to, it gives us loss of perspective. We are not able to figure out whether we are going in the right direction. It is also about loss of integration, like Colonel was mentioning earlier about the number of tools that are there, that we are trying to add additional parameters, additional defense layers, yet we are not able to look at which tool will help me solve which problem. And since we don't have that visibility, there is a delay in action or lockdown. And then when we try to lock down, we try to lock down everything, be it the best buses of the world or be it the local trains in Mumbai. Can cause a potential loss of data, and data is the new oil. So even if it is a small amount of data, but if it's taken by some organization which is looking at it as a ransomware attack, the impact on the brand, on the intellectual property would be huge, which results in loss of customer trust, money, and obviously business. The business resiliency is gone. So in order to do this, moving on to the next slide, if you have to get complete visibility, what it takes. In order to get the complete visibility, we need to have two pillars in mind. The first one is zero trust, which Colonel talked about, which is more to do with a complete intent-based understanding before anyone is allowed inside one's house or inside one's enterprise. So understanding the what, who, where, when, and how of any communication, any process, any application, workflows, any individual, any tools before it enters or tries to execute itself within the premises, so that I can even prevent a suicide attack. The second most critical element which we are talking about today is the visibility. If I can have that infrared thermometer in place so that I can detect the early symptoms and protect my community, the world will be a safer place, my enterprise will be a safer place. And these are very critical, important elements for having an adaptive attack protection as we move from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 and avoid or defer the attack surface to increase many folds. Moving on to the next slide. In order to improve this effectiveness and compliance, the visibility in the modern enterprise can be adopted by seeing everything and knowing everything. That's the first step. So if I've discovered everything that is going across in my environment, I get that granular visibility on a single dashboard, and as a result of which, I will be able to sort the good from the bad. I will not allow any compromise to happen, and hence with that zero compromise, I'll be able to segment or micro segment the users, applications, networks, or cloud workloads based on the laws of the land, based on the need of the business, based on the critical factors that are required to ensure that even if one asset is compromised, my attack surface does not spawn across the 65,534 ports across my enterprise. And last but not least, by whitelisting the good processes or the known processes that are business critical and not allowing anything else to work upon, I'm actually closing down all the doors and windows through which a malware can enter my ecosystem. It's time for a quick poll now. Glenn had talked about it, but just to re-emphasize why this is critical, because the seemingly good vector may not be the real good one, and that's really being seen today in today's environment where we are all faced with the viruses of different kinds. So the question is, what percentage range of attacks are attributed to insiders? Is it 20 to 30%? Is it 40 to 50%? Is it 60 to 70%? Is it 80 to 90%? We'll give some time for the respondents to choose the option. The correct answer to this question actually is 85% as per Gartner and Forrester. Now it's time for the results. So just to share with you, the most critical battles in the world, like Ramayana, was won because of an insider, and that was Vibhishan. So about 85% of the attacks are attributed to insider attacks, whether knowingly or unknowingly, that's a separate question, but that's how it is. Now I'll pass over the mantle to Deepak to take us through a more defined models and how it can be implemented in your enterprises.
Thanks, Samartha. So what we are talking about is, as Colonel and Smartha has pointed out, that if you cannot protect your assets or combination of assets unless until you have the visibility into that asset, what that asset is doing, how that asset is interacting with different other assets within the organization, that's where the visibility comes into picture. Now, to protect an assets, there are different ways of protecting it. As Colonel also mentioned, you can have a perimeter kind of a security, which enables the organizations to prevent something bad coming into their organization. However, with the advent of the cloud and different technologies wherein you can bypass that perimeter security, there needs to be something special which allows you to protect your assets at the source. Now, what we talk about that protection at the source is called microsegmentation. So it is just a software-defined policies instead of hardware appliances or network configurations. So there are four ways of, or if I may use the word, models in which you can protect those asset types. Number one is you can use the third-party combination. Second is that you can use the kind of a software on an agent sitting on every host. This type of model or the solution is better as directed by the NIST, wherein it talks that the protection has to be nearer the source. The better the source is protected, or the better the asset is protected. You can use different virtual firewalls, which are part of virtual firewall vendors or virtual hypervisor providers. The third is wherein you have the different cloud platforms which provide you the inherent capabilities of that. But what we are talking about here is important is about how do we protect these assets in a hybrid environment, in a on-premise environment, or in a cloud environment. So in today's organization, what you have is a mixed environment. You have a physical environment, you have a virtual environment, and maybe partly cloud. Okay. Now, keeping this in mind, we have been organizations, or typically security people, have been uh, uh, implementing the security measures after there's some kind of a threat is there. So everybody scrambles to change their network architecture, implement something new, so that the new threat which has come in, that organization can be, or that asset can be protected. So we call this as outside in. So you are trying to monitor, or you are trying to create your policies based on something which is outside. So this has to change, and here I will try to give an example before I move to the solution. Okay, so let's take this case as a use case of a data center where you have different applications, where you have different perimeter security, and when we talk of applications, we talk about the applications which include a web interface, which includes the databases, which talks of the business logic or the middleware. Now, if you look at the diagram which I'm showing over here, it's very difficult to visualize what all servers or what all assets comprise of uh, a CRM application, an ERP application, or a development environment. So it's difficult to figure it out. Now, is there a way by which I can tell that these 3 servers are in the production environment, these 5 servers or 10 servers are in the development, and these are in the staging or the testing environment? So it is very difficult in a sense to visualize that. There may be tools, certain tools, but they don't give you the actual visibility into what actually is happening between these assets, and creating a kind of a micro perimeter. Now let's understand this. Let's say now typically when we do this, let's assume that there is a web server which has a vulnerability. So typically attack lifecycle for any hack is based on these 5-6 principles, wherein you have an attacker does a reconnaissance of the network or the assets. He or she checks for the vulnerabilities, exploits the vulnerabilities, tries to find out where, tries to be low in the system, tries to hide himself or herself, and preferably try to escalate the privileges to move into different zones of the data center or an organization, kind of a thing. Now this case study which I'm talking about has already happened, and it is a proved fact that this is how the hacker moved into the organization. Now this is a case study of Equifax. Now what I'm talking about here there's a detailed report by GOA, a Government Accountability Office, which has audited the Equifax for a couple of months, and they have come out with the report which talks about that as per the logs, as per the information they have on their hand from the forensics, the hacker executed 9,000 queries on the databases which were not part of a dispute portal. So in Equifax breach, the hacker moved into the internal systems through an online dispute portal which was vulnerable, and the people were not able to judge that, were not able to find it for 76 days before it was actually discovered and reported. Now, why this happened was a couple of things which we hear about is, one, Equifax or any organization with such kind of a breach may not have the visibility into the vulnerability of that particular system. They don't have the ways by which they can actually find out if there is any lateral movement, how that lateral movement will happen, how an asset can be reached from other asset. Are there databases which are separated and accessed only by the particular application which is supposed to this? Is there any separation of environments between a production environment, between a staging environment, between a testing environment, and between a development environment? And more importantly is, what is the attack surface exposure even when a breach happens? Is there any visibility into that? So these were some of the points which we have come up with once we review the Equifax breach. Now, what is the solution for this kind of thing? As Kernel and Smartha has mentioned already, is that we need to have an architecture, zero trust network architecture, wherein wherein the security is not from outside in, it is from inside out. So here what we talk about is that the security has to be nearer to the source, or nearer, or especially on the source if it can happen. So zero trust architecture, which I have used two words here, PDP and PEP. These are given by NIST, which say that the policy detection point and policy enforcement point have to be closer to the system. The more the closer, the better the protection is. So this is what we refer as, ColorTokens refers as inside out security view. Now let's try, when we implement a ColorToken solution on micro perimetering the application, what will happen if we have something like a Equifax breach. So this is the example which we are taking again. First is by using software defined agents, we create micro perimeter across the applications. Now this helps me to visualize, implement, and see what is within my data center. So I can have one single dashboard which will give me information about the applications, their environment, production, staging, testing. It also allows me to give you the cross functionality, cross traffic between the applications, cross traffic between the segments. It also helps me to protect those particular applications. Now let's try to see what will happen in this case. Now when the high risk IP or the hacker enters into the system, right? So what happens in this case is he or she can have a visibility to the next level. So you implementing the ColorTokens micro perimeter, the hacker will be able to see only the next level of application. So if you have a 3-tier application, he can or she can see a maximum of 2nd-tier application. Now what happens once we have the results saying, we feel through our ColorTokens dashboard that there has been a spike of traffic in here from the outside world for this particular web server, we can quarantine that directly from the console. So therefore, thereby, one, reducing the breach. Number two, protecting our other assets which are there within our database, within our data center. Now this data center can be either on-premise, it can have a physical presence, it can have a virtual presence, or it can have a cloud presence. But let's try to see, once I implement this micro perimeter, what will happen. Just give you an inside view of it. This is a representation only, and you can see here the red lines are coming out, wherein a database server is trying to, maybe hacked, is trying to access something which is not, which it should not. So it is accessing the internet, it's accessing some update servers, so on and so forth, right? However, what should be the actual traffic, or what should be the actual communication, or what should be the actual way this database server should interact? So when we move to the next stage over here, we see that when I implement this over here, okay, unauthorized block, so you will see that all the unauthorized communication which is happening from a database server is automatically blocked. Now what actual communication the application should have is shown by the lines which is presented over here. So which it means that I am providing the visibility into the applications, I am providing the visibility what an asset should do, I am providing the visibility into the entire application system itself, and I am preventing it from other applications which may be vulnerable. Now how do we represent it? We represent it in the form of bubbles. Now you can see the first slide which I showed you was talking about different application, the CRM application and enterprise ARP application, a lab or a test environment. Now this we represent it as a bubble. Now you can see these bubbles are micro-perimetered by other smaller bubbles, wherein an application is taken as a particular bubble. So, for example, ARP and CRM is one bubble. Now, what this helps me in giving you the high-risk visibility into the IPs. It allows me to see different exposure, different assets within that particular applications. It helps me to control the traffic between the applications and within the application. It helps me to find out if there is any leakage or if there's a misconfiguration wherein my attack surface exposure can increase. It helps me to find out it helps me to divide the applications based on the functionality, the context, the environment, and the location. Now this is this is what we are talking about here. Now if you give the actual visualization, this is how your data center will look like, wherein you have different communication lines, different applications into different bubbles, wherein they are communicating within the system, outside the system, and giving you an idea of what kind of traffic is flowing between these applications. Now I can also give you the information about the trusted traffic, the untrusted traffic, the vulnerability part of a particular system, providing the in-depth into the processes which are there, and if there are any processes which are having vulnerabilities, I can provide that information. So what is that once I have deployed this? What is that an administrator or a security information or a CISO type person will get? So what we have is we have a complete dashboard wherein you have the visualization on the right hand side, wherein it talks about the visualization, but for the dashboard perspective, this is the dashboard wherein it gives you the information about the traffic over 7 days, the vulnerabilities if there are any, the traffic which we have blocked, if there's any cross environment, cross segmentation information going on, if there is any vulnerabilities happening over there, if there are any alerts which needs to be taken care of. It gives me the geolocation of the traffic which is coming in from my servers or going to the server. That's what we provides information about it. How do we do it? We take the telemetry from these agents, correlate with the information which we have from NIST and the different threat intelligence agencies. We correlate that information and present you this info to the dashboard over here. Now that what is important is the information which is provided is real time, near real time, and it's displayed on the dashboard. What we do over here is this is based on the policy which you implement over here and provide it by the security administrator. This ends my session. I will hand over it to Smartha. Back to you, Smartha.
Thank you so much, Deepak. Thank you so much, Col Inderjeet Ji, for taking us through this wonderful guidance on visibility, the first steps towards microsegmentation. Now it's time for question and answers. We are now opening the floor for the question and answer session. You can use the question panels available on the right hand side corner of your screen to pose questions. All right, the first question which we have is, what do you mean by bringing your own cloud? I believe this question is for Col Inderjeet Ji. So by I think there's some issue on the technical side. So by bringing our own cloud means like it can be a private cloud which is hosted within the environment or within the data center, etc., or it can be a specific public cloud, or it can be a VPC connection that we want. So whichever cloud you're using, across all clouds, across all kinds of bare metal servers, across all virtual machines, across the containers nowadays, you get a unified visibility right from the days of Windows XP to today, right from the early Linux versions to today, and Mac versions as well. So it's a comprehensive visibility that allows you to look at all the traffic, not just the north-south, but also the east-west, any ports, any communication that is going on. The second question, if there's a follow-up question, feel free to add it to the chat window, we will answer it. The second question was, what would an organization do who hasn't built a zero trust model in the architecture? Colonel, would you like to answer this question?
Yes, it's a nice question, and if you're not already considered having a zero trust, this is the new technology. We should try and imbibe this technology for the present day threats. And like I brought out earlier, that earlier we were just talking of the perimeter security and the different silo equipment which were there with us in silos, the equipment in silos. So the zero trust can be factored into your existing security posture itself. And the color tokens is one of the best solutions which is available.
Thank you, Colonel. So just to add to it, there is no perfect time for zero trust to be started in any organization. The sooner you start, the less probability of a pandemic exists, because you're protecting it, you're creating those meters, and you're looking at all the intents before any malware or a wrong agent enters into your ecosystem. Question number 3. How does an organization achieve microsegmentation? So, Deepak, if you can get back to that model slide.
So there are three or four ways of implementing microsegmentation. So different OEMs have different ways of implementing microsegmentation. For instance, virtualized technology, virtualized OEMs who offer virtual environments offer that microsegmentation based on virtual firewall. Hardware-based solutions offer it based on the network-based segmentation. However, if you go by the NIST, it is important that because it's important that we have the protection directly onto the source. We create a micro perimeter at the source. Now, if you see today's endpoint, today's your laptop is your network. You have internet connectivity, you have access to the information within the system, you have access to the applications on the cloud, you have access to the internal applications, you have access to the other parts of the internet also. Your endpoint is your network. So how do you protect that? Is using using an agent-based solution on the source, so that you can create a micro perimeter of those applications and the assets, and at the same time have the identity access management implemented onto that.
Thank you, Deepak, for that. Question number 4 is, do the technology products come ready with zero trust models?
So the answer is no. We were developing on the point of how the Gartner says that your risks are dynamic, your threats are dynamic, and most of the security solutions which are coming up are being configured for your static risk and the threats. So that's how, if you want to get in for the dynamic risks and threats, zero trust is one of the technologies which you can evolve and use it into your networks.
Just to add to it, there are solutions in the technology segment which are built grounds up on zero trust, like ours, but such solutions are fewer in the industry as compared to the larger segments where it's more to do with reactive security as compared to proactive security. Moving on to question number 5. How this zero trust software identifies the attack has not percolated down to interdependent applications? Great question. I would like Deepak to answer it.
Can you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
How the zero trust software identifies the attack has not percolated down to interdependent applications?
Okay, so first thing is zero trust means that if you have trusted anything which has entered into your network, you need to verify it. That's number one. Number two is when we talk of typical data center, you have from a particular resource, you can access other resources also, right? That means you have a visibility of other resources from that particular asset. Now with micro segmentation, what happens is unless and until you are authorized, okay, unless and until you have been given permission to access other resources, you will not be able to access it. Now this is very important when an attacker enters into the system. He or she does not have any visibility except the next level. So that means if there's a web application, just give an example, if, uh, if there's a web application which has been hacked, okay, then where all it can go. If I go back to the presentation, if you might have seen here, where all can I go if I am hacked at this place? But because of the microperimeter or the microsegmentation, my visibility is only to the next level, logically to the next level. That means the next server which I can access, or the next piece of information which I access, the next connectivity I can access. That is what it is here. Now, what happens in this case is that I don't have a visibility into the databases. So that's the first way of protecting it from spreading. Second one is if a CRM for example is being compromised, the web server is being compromised, the hacker does not have a visibility onto the ERP application or to the lab application or to a development application or an environment. So this is how you will be able to contain the spread.
Thanks, Deepak. And just to add to it, as part of the solutions which are available in the market like ours, what we also do is we also give an option to probe. So I can probe any particular asset, for example, a web server, and look at what are the ports, what are the subnets, what are the IPs that it can access, and at which levels. So what it gives me is the complete attack surface that a potential threat can look at if this asset was going to be compromised. So that probing also helps in identifying or understanding the known risks as to where all a particular malicious or good factor can communicate with. The last question right now, sorry, there are two more questions, so we'll do it slightly faster. Question number 6 is how this zero trust software identifies the attack. So this we have done. Last question is how does zero trust solution deployment integrates with Kubernetes orchestrator to play a role in container-based deployments?
So basically, there are different ways of accessing the container-based environments. There are different technologies which use API integration with the cloud environment to look into what an container is doing, to which parts of the other APIs it's connecting to what other assets, or if I may use the word URLs it is connecting to. And based on the policy, you can implement, you can enforce those policies to prevent that particular container to, say, for instance, connect to a malicious URL.
Thank you, Deepak. And now it's time for the last poll. Since this is a part of a webinar series, we would like to hear from the audience as to what interests them more, and accordingly have this webinar series and thought leadership going on. So as part of the series, what is the next topic that interests you as audience the most? So please do select one. Now it's time for the poll results so that everybody sees what is the interest of the audience as well. So industry-based micro-segmentation use cases has got the maximum poll. The next session that we would be organizing jointly would be based on industry-based micro-segmentation use cases. Thank you everyone for attending. Please do visit our website www.colortokens.com for more information. In the interest of time, we are going to address the remainder of the questions offline if there are any. You can send them to webinars@colortokens.com and we'll be happy to have them answered. With this, we bring this session to a close, and I'd like to thank once again Col Inderjeet Singh and Deepak Kaul for sharing their thoughts. And also big thanks to all you participants. Take care and have a nice day. Stay protected, be safe, and have the right visibility everywhere based on Zero Trust. Thanks
Thank you very
again.
much and have a great day, guys.
With this, we close today's webinar and looking forward for the next one.